Welcome to Built with Purpose. I am Chris Fay, and this is the show where vision meets execution and leadership leaves a legacy. From design studios to innovation hubs and product lines to skylines, we meet the people building more than great companies. They're creating culture, driving impact, and shaping what's next. These are the stories and strategies behind how the world gets built with purpose. All right, everybody, welcome to Built with Purpose. Today is another episode of Between the Builds. This is a chance for us to recap on our last conversation that we had, and we had a great one last week. Chris Dornfeld, a good friend of mine, and also one of the co-founders of Whistle Rewards, a very cool tech-enabled platform that does more micro rewards with a heavy focus on the construction industry. And it was really interesting to listen to Chris about some of the science about why we reward the people that work for us, and that the dynamics of the workplace are changing today to not just be a annual performance bonus or an annual compensation increase, but how can we reward activity as soon as it occurs? Think back to your work life, and when you do something really good, right? Even if you're a leader or a CEO or an individual contributor, and you do something really good and nobody says anything. And then, a month later, somebody comes up to you and says, Chris, you've been doing a really good job. Here's some key things that I've picked up on. You did this and you did this. I mean, that feels nice, right? But it feels a little bit insincere. It feels part of a process, and it doesn't necessarily reward the behavior when it occurs. Versus, when have you actually done something really good? And somebody comes up to you immediately and says, hey, dude, Chris, you did something really good. Like what you did right there was amazing. And here's a little coffee gift card. Here's a little something to say thank you. How does that resonate with you? Number one, it immediately reinforces the actual behavior at the time that it occurred. So you can immediately resonate that, man, that positive behavior yielded this positive result, and I got a little bit of a reward for it. I think in our conversation with Chris last week, that's what we really uncovered, is we uncovered that the way that our minds think, the behavioral science behind the way that our minds think, are actually geared more towards these micro rewards. And I think what's interesting is, we're all leading businesses or working in businesses that have multiple generations, and different generations respond differently to the workplace. We've talked about this with Gen Z and millennials and Gen X and baby boomers. And, I think one of the roles of us as leaders is to make sure that we're speaking the different languages of our employees and our teams. We're not speaking different languages in Spanish and French and English, but we're speaking baby boomer. We're speaking Gen X. We're speaking millennial. We're speaking Gen Z. It's incumbent upon us as leaders to understand how each of these generations and how each of our team members responds to rewards. Here's a couple cool examples that I've got. So younger workers crave frequent recognition. So Gallup found that Gen Z and younger millennials are twice as likely as boomers to want feedback a few times per month. Peer recognition matters most in digital native generations, so they view appreciation from teammates as more credible than oftentimes top-down praise. And then Gen Z views real-time communication as essential. Delayed performance reviews feels outdated and demotivating. So sometimes you're out there and you're talking to various leaders or people across the space, and they're like, oh my God, these Gen Zs, or the millennials, or oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time with baby boomers. The reality is all of us are trying to build businesses. We need experience from all of these different generations in order to build a company that can last and a company that can take the next evolution of growth. And we either need to, as leaders, decide that we are going to embrace and learn some of the best practices of working with each of these generations across our organization, or we're going to be closed-minded to those ideas and probably going to struggle a bit. We're going to see higher levels of turnover. If we might be more favored towards the Gen X or the baby boomers, we're going to have a hard time recruiting young folks. If we're too geared towards the young folks, we might miss out on some key experience that's out there. So the right types of organizations and teams actually have a beautiful blend of all of these various generations inside of their businesses. And they have found a way to reward and incent and motivate each of them. So for the Gen Z, it might be a more of a micro reward. For the baby boomer, it might be more stability. For Gen X, it might be something that's a bit more practical or just a simple, sincere thank you. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure we understand what makes our people tick and how we can incent them to continue to perform for our organizations. I had a conversation with one of our leaders earlier today, and we were talking around connecting with your team. Oftentimes I think we make assumptions about what our team needs, what's going on through their minds, and and some of the challenges they're facing. And if our teams don't feel free to communicate with us, we're not going to be able to gather that vital insights. And one of the best ways sometimes to get people to open up to you as a leader is to actually be vulnerable and share some things yourself. So I found in the past that, when I actually admit some of my faults and I admit some of my weaknesses and some of the struggles that I'm going through, it begins to open up a bridge of opportunity for the person to reciprocate with some of their information. They can identify with me that they're going through struggles, that they have some challenges, they have some concerns. So I think this idea of being vulnerable with our teams and leading by sharing some insights with them is a great way to connect. But you have to connect with your teams. I think today we get so busy with our work and meetings and kids and family and school and all the demands that we have on our lives that oftentimes we have a hard time connecting. And especially in a remote or virtual environment where we have teams maybe spread across the country or a specific region, not coming into the office, you have to be hyper intentional about how you're connecting with those teams. And for me, I'm just a big advocate of some level of face-to-face engagement of the team. Part of our offices are completely in office, and we've got other markets where we have folks that are not in the office all the time and working remote. And you can tell there's a sincere difference in the level of connection between the in-office team and those remote teams. And it's not that one is better than the other. But when we come back to the core issue that kind of Chris was talking about last week and rewarding our teams, is you have to understand how your teams tick. You have to understand how the people in your organization are thinking, why they're thinking that way, and you're giving them an outlet to express their thoughts, ideas, concerns to you. And obviously, when we start talking about rewards, it's critical that we understand what makes baby boomers and Gen X and millennials and Gen Zs tick. But it's also incumbent upon us to connect with our people and to make sure that we're asking them what makes them tick. And I think if we can ultimately just connect with our teams, break down these barriers of communication, get this psychologically safe environment going where we're free to discuss any topic without any fear of repercussion, then all of a sudden we start seeing acceleration ensue. We start seeing our companies accelerate, our teams accelerate, and we have this amazing opportunity ahead. So I really enjoyed our conversation last week. I think about these micro rewards inside of our business and what we're doing. And I would say that we're guilty of an annual performance review. We're guilty of not giving immediate feedback when things particularly happen. And certainly on the reward side, I think there's an opportunity for us to, we are all geared towards kind of instant gratification, those dopamine hits that we get from a text message coming in or an email coming in. And we wonder, why would our rewards and incentive program not follow that? But ultimately, it comes down to connection. And my challenge for you is, are you connecting with your team? Do you have the true pulse of everybody that's on your team? And if you have leaders that are underneath you or above you, do you have a connection with those leaders? And are you actually talking about real things? Or are you just talking about the semantics of the day-to-day transactional business? And the more we connect, we know the better our teams will be, and the more we're going to be able to achieve our vision, our purpose, in our company. So with that, we got some really cool conversations coming up. Hopefully today's Between the Builds was helpful for you. I'd encourage you to follow us on social media and look out for upcoming episodes. And then hoping you all continue to build with purpose. And we'll talk to you next time. See ya. Okay, thanks for joining me on Built with Purpose. If you have enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps more bold leaders find the show. For resources and show notes, visit our website and connect with me, Chris Fay, on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep building great companies, cultures, and legacies with purpose.